Karen pretended to be completely bandaged and rolled up to my front yard in a wheelchair, accusing me of assaulting her. Even I almost believed it when I saw her like that. Ridiculous. Karma's coming for you, Karen. Just wait. Have you ever been falsely accused of something so outrageous that you couldn't believe it yourself? Leave a comment below and share your story. It was a warm autumn morning, and the neighborhood was as peaceful as ever. Gentle sunlight filtered through the lush green leaves, casting shimmering patterns on the ground. From my window, I could see little birds fluttering cheerfully while neighbors tended to their gardens. Mr. Smith was pushing his lawn mower. Mrs. Carter was walking her dog, and I was watering the bright yellow chrysanthemums that had just bloomed. It was such a calm and ordinary day. Nobody could have guessed that chaos was just around the corner. Suddenly, from the end of the street, a familiar figure appeared, Karen, the middle-aged woman who lived a few houses down. She had appointed herself as the neighborhood monitor, setting her own rules and going around enforcing them, from parking regulations to watering schedules. Karen loved meddling in everyone's business, and because of that, nobody in the neighborhood really liked her. But since she was a neighbor, people mostly just kept their distance to avoid unnecessary conflict. At that moment, I was bending down, carefully tending to the flowers, when I heard hurried footsteps. I looked up to see Karen standing right in front of my house, leaning on crutches, her face twisted with pain. She was wearing a wide woolen hat and had a thick white bandage wrapped around her head, looking as if she had just survived a serious accident. Her left arm was in a cast, looking freshly broken, while her right hand clutched the crutches, hobbling along as if every step was pure agony. "Maris, are you okay?" I rushed over, feeling a pang of concern. What happened? Karen stood tall, her cold eyes like sharp blades, devoid of any empathy. "You pushed me," she snapped, her lips tight. "You shoved me while I was performing my neighborhood watch duties. Now I can't walk properly." I froze, unable to process what she just said. "You? What are you talking about? I don't understand. What duty?" Karen raised an eyebrow, her eyes gleaming maliciously. "I was on duty, supervising the neighborhood, making sure everyone follows the regulations. When I asked you to pay the $2,000 fine for illegal parking, you pushed me." Her voice grew louder and louder as if she was deliberately trying to stir up a scene. I just stood there, staring at her in disbelief. What on earth was she talking about? I hadn't done anything to her. Karen had always acted like she owned the neighborhood, but I had never asked for or agreed to pay any fine. She wasn't a police officer or an authority figure, just a nosy neighbor who liked to meddle. I never pushed you," I said, trying to suppress the anger rising inside me. "You can't just make things up like that. I never did anything to hurt you." Karen didn't back down. She straightened up, eyes burning with determination. "It's not just my word. I have witnesses. Those kind-hearted neighbors over there will confirm that you attacked me." She gestured toward 3 women standing a short distance away, their faces stern and solemn, each nodding as if they had been coached beforehand. These women, who never had opinions of their own, always sided with Karen out of fear that she would make life difficult for them if they didn't comply. At that moment, I felt so furious I could barely contain myself. "This is nonsense. Those ladies just follow whatever you say. You can't do this, Karen," I shouted, but immediately felt like a fish caught in a net. Karen had fabricated evidence, even if it was fake, and all I had was the truth. But was the truth enough to stand against her lies? "You will pay for your reckless behavior," Karen declared, her tone daring me to challenge her. "I'm taking you to court. I've suffered serious injuries, and you're going to pay for it." I just stood there, stunned and unsure of what to do. Everything had escalated so quickly, and I couldn't believe that a neighbor could make up such an awful story. She had fake witnesses, and I knew that if I didn't do something, I would be dragged into a lawsuit and face unimaginable consequences. But I wasn't going to give up so easily. If you want to take this to court, I'll go. But I won't stay silent. I'll fight to clear my name, I declared, trying to sound confident even though my mind was spinning with confusion and anger. Karen just gave me a thin, mocking smile and turned away without another word. The neighborhood ladies remained there, showing no sign of doubting Karen's story. But I knew I had to find a way to expose her lies. For the sake of the truth, I couldn't just let it slide. Things got even more intense when I received the official court notice. Karen had filed a lawsuit against me for assault. My name was printed in bold, right next to the word defendant. I stood frozen in my living room, staring at the paper as if it were a nightmare. I couldn't believe it. How could she file a lawsuit over something that never happened? But the reality was staring me in the face, and I knew that if I didn't act, I would fall right into the trap Karen had set. I refused to sit back and become the victim of Karen's twisted game. Anger burned within me, and I made up my mind not to back down. I had to uncover the truth and expose Karen for who she really was, no matter what it took. I began my investigation. Every evening, I spent hours going over every detail of the incident. I talked to neighbors, gathering small bits of information that I hadn't noticed before. The whole neighborhood was still engulfed in uneasy silence, everyone too afraid to even mention Karen's name. She had built an impenetrable wall of power and intimidation around herself. But I wouldn't let that stop me. Day after day, I kept gathering information. One afternoon, while chatting with Mrs. Miller, the local grocer, she suddenly looked around cautiously before whispering, "You wouldn't believe it, but Karen's pulled this stunt before." Nobody dared to speak up though. That statement hit me like a bolt of lightning. Karen had done this before, staging accidents and making false accusations. But this time, things had gone too far. I continued digging for more evidence. Then, one day, I stumbled upon something I never thought I would find, a video. A security camera from a neighbor's house had captured Karen standing at my gate weeks earlier. In the footage, Karen was clearly facing away from the camera, looking around to make sure she was being recorded. Then, out of nowhere, she stumbled and fell dramatically to the ground, clutching her leg and grimacing as if in excruciating pain. It was painfully obvious that it was all an act, a perfectly choreographed piece of theater. "No way," I exclaimed while watching the video. Karen had faked the entire accident, using it as false evidence to deceive the court and everyone else. But I needed more proof, something to show that this wasn't just Karen's scheme, but also the doing of those meddling neighbors who had served as her false witnesses. I kept investigating. Then, by sheer luck, I came across an audio recording of a conversation between Karen and one of the neighborhood ladies. "You help me out with this testimony, and I'll make sure you're not on my bad side. Just say she pushed me, and it'll all be over." Karen's voice sounded confident and manipulative. Hearing that recording was like a punch to the gut. I had everything I needed, not just proof of Karen's lies, but also evidence exposing the fake witnesses she had coerced into helping her. Without wasting another minute, I rushed to my lawyer's office, showing him the video and audio recordings. He watched and listened carefully, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. "You did great. We're going to win this case. Karen's deception won't last much longer," he assured me confidently. The day of the trial arrived, and I barely got any sleep the night before. The courtroom was tense, packed with people. Karen showed up looking as pathetic as ever, bandages wrapped around her head, her left arm still in a cast, maintaining her exaggerated limp. She kept her chin up, looking at everyone with that same smug attitude. But I was done being intimidated. I was ready to fight back. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up with a calm yet determined demeanor. My lawyer began playing the video on the screen. The entire courtroom fell silent as Karen's fake fall played out in vivid detail. Not a single person could deny the blatant truth displayed right before their eyes. I watched Karen's face turn pale, her confidence shattered. The neighborhood ladies who had vouched for her looked equally panicked, glancing around in shame. I stepped forward, my voice steady and resolute. As you can see, this is clear evidence that Karen staged her own accident and used it as the basis for filing a false lawsuit against me, I stated, keeping my gaze locked on Karen. And here, we have an audio recording of Karen coercing one of her witnesses to lie on her behalf. The courtroom remained eerily quiet. No one dared to utter a word. Karen stared back at me, her eyes filled with fury, but unable to form a coherent response. It was over. She was out of moves. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice firm and unwavering. Miss Karen, your actions are a flagrant abuse of the legal system. You will be held accountable for fabricating evidence and deliberately harming another person's reputation. You will be subjected to heavy penalties. Karen's face turned red with shock, unable to process what was happening. She stood up, looking around as if searching for an escape, but there was none. The neighborhood ladies, who had once sided with her, now remained silent, refusing to even look at her. The once feared Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, was now a pariah, completely shunned and disgraced. Justice had prevailed at last, and I had reclaimed my honor. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, like an immense burden had finally been lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a victory over someone who had long manipulated and deceived others. As the judge pronounced the verdict, I couldn't help but let out a deep breath of satisfaction. The judge's voice rang out, strong and unyielding. The court recognizes the defendant's innocence. Miss Karen, your actions constitute both deceit and misuse of the law for personal gain. You must face the legal consequences of your behavior. The courtroom remained silent for a moment. I couldn't hold back the grateful sigh that escaped me. It was an incredible feeling, like breaking free from chains that had bound me for too long. I hadn't just defended my reputation, I had restored justice in a case I never thought I'd have to face. Karen, meanwhile, sat frozen in her seat, her eyes empty and haunted by defeat. She couldn't believe what had just happened. All the arrogance and superiority she had carried for so long now lay shattered around her. Her words no longer held any power, and she was no longer the neighborhood terror she once prided herself on being. The neighbors who once bowed to her demands now stayed silent, not daring to approach her. Karen eventually rose, her face burning with a mix of rage and humiliation. She grabbed her handbag and stormed out of the courtroom without a backward glance. The eyes of everyone around were filled with disdain and contempt. Karen's downfall wasn't just a personal blow to her. It was a harsh wake-up call for anyone who thought they could manipulate and exploit others without consequence. I stood there, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride. Even though this ordeal had taken a lot of time and effort, I knew I had done the right thing. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it always wins in the end. I glanced at Karen one last time, a slight smile forming on my lips. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it always triumphs. As I left the courthouse, the golden glow of the late afternoon sun bathed the neighborhood. I felt the unmistakable warmth of justice finally being served. Not only had I won the case, but I also gained the respect of the community. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now approached me, shaking my hand and thanking me for standing up against injustice. Yet one lingering question remained in my mind. Did Karen actually learn her lesson? Did she realize that no matter how many lies she spun, the truth would always prevail? Or would she continue living in her own bubble of arrogance, never truly reflecting on her actions? What do you think? Who was in the right, me or Karen? Have you ever been falsely accused by someone? Share your story. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Crazy Neighbor Drama for more epic turnarounds and justice served.